I'm Anthony Elmore, President and Founder of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. We at the Proud Black Buddhist World Association practice the Buddhist teachings as taught by the 13th century Japanese Buddhist sage Nichiren Shonin. We have a very exciting Buddhist lecture for you today. Now, what is even more exciting is that we at the Proud Black Buddhist World Association are the first Black Buddhist voice in the world. Throughout history, or at least within the last 2,000 years, Buddhism has been dominated by Asians, and the Asians, for the most part, have extricated all Black Buddhist history, culture, and language. You see, in the 1st century AD, a Buddhism was born that separated Buddhism by race, culture, and language. That Buddhism was Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism is the time when the Buddha was changed from black to white and all Black history was extricated from Buddhism. Now, what we are excited about, and it's very exciting, is that now we provide a Black Buddhist voice, because there have not been a Black Buddhist voice in 2,000 years. Now, the way that Nichiren Shonin, again, we practice the teachings of Nichiren Shonin, the 13th century Japanese Buddhist sage. Now, the way that Nichiren Shonin taught his disciples, he sent letters to his disciples. Now, these letters were called the Gosho. Now, please understand that Nichiren Shonin was born on February the 22nd, 1222. Our lecture today is Nichiren Shonin was a Black Japanese. The Japanese Nichiren Sect covered the fact that Nichiren Shonin was, by today's standards, a Black man. Now, let me be clear. Nichiren Shonin was about as Japanese as one can be Japanese. In regards to Japanese people and its culture, racist Japanese are those who practice Japanese cultural imperialism make it a point to remove the fact that Nichiren Shonin was, by today's standards, a Black man. We African Americans can be excited and joyful that we have a Black historical reference and culture tied to Nichiren Shonin. Now, our lecture today again is Nichiren Shonin was a Black man. The absolute way to know that Nichiren Shonin was a Black Buddhist whitewash is through listening to the words of Nichiren himself. Now, in the Gosho, now the Gosho is banishment to sorrow, and it reads, Nichiren is the son of a Chandala family who lived near the Tojo and Otwa province in the remote countryside of the eastern part of Japan. Unquote. Nichiren also says in the Gosho, it is called Letter from Sorrow, and it reads, quote, how much more true this is of Nichiren, who in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family, unquote. You see, please understand that Nichiren Shonin specifically tells us that he is a Black man when he says that he was born poor and lowly to a, quote, Chandala family. See, Chandala makes it particularly challenging for Japanese to whitewash Nichiren's Black history. Now, let's take it further. See, Nichiren could have said that he was born poor and lowly to a fisherman family. Nichiren specifically used the word Chandala. Now, please Google the word Chandala and Dalit. You will find that a Dalit is a Chandala and a Chandala is a Dalit. Dalit is the name that the oppressed blacks in India use. The oppressed people. It means broken people. Now, please understand that the Japanese sects, the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu, when it comes to the term Chandala, they whitewash the term. See, let me give you an example of whitewashing, some of the same things that's happening in our culture today. Now, in Texas, in the social studies textbooks, what the white races have done is to deliberately rewrite history and whitewash the low down and dirty and evil perils of slavery, Jim Crow law, and the Ku Klux Klans, and how mean-spirited and evil whites were and white slave owners were to African or black people. See, they rewrote the history. Now, doing this poses a danger to school children all over the country. Now, in regards to Japanese Nichiren sects, most Japanese whitewash both Nichiren Shonin and they whitewash the caste system of what it really means to be a Chandala. Now, let us deal with whitewashing. And I will tell you about the Chandala. Now, in the Nichiren Shu magazine, that's in 2007, there's Reverend Shoji Komuro. Now, he was the San Francisco Nichiren Shu priest who wrote about Chandala. Now, we're going to show you how he actually whitewashed the word Chandala and take away any indication of Chandala being black. Now, this is what he writes. In the Nichiren Shu magazine, and he lectures on the Go Show, Banishment to Sorrow, which we just quoted. This is what he writes about Chandala. Quote, in ancient Indian society, Chandala referred to the lowest class of people in charge of butchering animals. Now, that explanation itself is outright racist and is outright simplistic, and it is a clear-cut case of whitewashing the horrors of the caste system, and it actually whitewashed the word Chandala. Now, let's go into what the SGI library teaches about this. Now, this is what the SGI writes. Quote, about Chandala. He says, a class of untouchables below the lowest of the four castes in the ancient Indian caste system. People in this class handled corpses, butchered animals, and carried out other tasks associated with death or killing of living things. Now, it goes on further. The Maya Sutra mentions a Chandala who drives sheep or auction to the slaughterhouse. Now, Nichiren declared himself a member of the Chandala class because he was born to a fisherman's family. Now, this is what the SGI writes, because he was born to a fisherman's family. See, they're trying to doctor it up. In his letter, Banishment to Sorrow, Nichiren says, Nichiren is the son of a Chandala family who lived near the sea of Tojun, Elmore Providence, in the remote countryside of the eastern part of Japan. Now, in this letter from Sado, he also describes himself as one who in this life was born poor and lowly to a Chandala family. Describes himself as one, who is a Chandala. Now, through such statements, Nichiren implied that even someone from the lowest rung of society, such as himself, can attain the supreme enlightenment. Hence, his teaching is meant particularly for those without wealth or status, unquote. You see, what the SGI does is they whitewash the perils and the low downness and the evils of the caste system and the fact that the Chandala was a racist job and practice of the whites, or at least the lighter-skinned people in India. You see, what the SGI do is glaze over it, or what they do is whitewash. Now, in regards to teaching you about SGI and the word Chandala, as well as Nichiren Shu or Nichiren Shoshu, they are no better than the racist lawmakers who try to whitewash history. Now, let us give you an explanation of Chandala. Now, first of all, a Chandala is a practice in the history of mankind. It is the worst inhumanity against humanity in the history of mankind. And what you have is, imagine the SGI and Nichiren Shoshu and Nichiren Shu explaining the worst inhumanity against humanity, against another human in the history of mankind. And they gloss over it and says, oh, it's just a job. Oh, it's just a task. It's not a task, ladies and gentlemen. Being a Chandala was a living hell. Now, let me tell you about the Chandala. First of all, a Chandala could not come out at night, or could not come out when the sun was out, because they were considered so polluting that even their shadow was polluting, and you could not even step on the shadow of a Chandala. That's number one. Number two, a Chandala had to carry a bell, make noise to let you know he's coming, so you could not look at him or step on his shadow. A Chandala had to carry a broom on his ass, so when he walked, he had to cover his tracks, because you could not even walk on the tracks of a Chandala. A Chandala had to cover a can to catch his spittle, because even the spit of a Chandala was considered polluting. Now, they had the worst inhumanity against humanity in the world. Imagine that if a Chandala looked at a Brahmin, just if you walk around and you just look at a Brahmin, your eyes are to be plucked out. If you were to just hear the sacred, what they call Sanskrit Brahmin teachings, molten iron was to be poured into your ears. If you would just talk or say something or even ask a question, your tongue could be cut out. Now, what they had to do is they were like human corpse. They could only wear clothes from those who were dead, because they wanted to make these people not have any sense of dignity. So you can only wear clothes that comes from a corpse, and the only thing that a Chandala could own was a dog and a donkey. Even the women who were Chandala, they could not cover themselves up, so they had to show their breasts. They could not stay in a house with a tile roof. Anything that would actually bring them to a point of self-dignity was stripped away from these people. They had the worst inhumanity against all of humanity. This is the start of racism in the world. And what you have in the Japanese Nichiren sects, the SGI, Nichiren Shoshu, and Nichiren Shu, what is absent from these Nichiren sects is that they never say anything about the Chandala. Even more disgusting is that throughout Mahayana Buddhism, you see no writing. you see nothing talking about the evil of this system, because they set up a system where the light skins were at the top and the black skins were at the bottom. The Brahmins, who were lighter, they had the privilege. Then you had the Kshatriyas, who were the warriors or the fighters. They were second, and the Vasas, who was third. Now you had the Sutras. The Sutras were the black people. It was kind of like the case of the house nigger and the field nigger. See, the house nigger, like master, when master gets sick, he said, yeah, we sick. Now, in the sutra was kind of like a house nigger, and the Chandala was the field nigger because they had to do the worst of tasks. See, they were not even in the caste system. They were considered outcasts. Now, so you got the worst inhumanity of humanity in all of the world, and you have Nichiren Shonin, who says and identifies that he was of the Chandala family. Nichiren Shonin, ladies and gentlemen, is telling us that he was black, and this is who he was from. Now, let's be clear. Only a Chandala is black. Now, I have never read of any case where the Japanese Nichiren sects or the Asians were sympathetic or empathetic or fought against the injustice of caste. Even to this day, there are residues of the caste system that it exists in India today. Now, the one thing that we who are black Nichiren Buddhists can be excited about is that our black Buddhist heritage with Nichiren Shonin, because Nichiren identified as not just being poor, he identified with the Chandala people, he identified with black people, and we're happy about that. Now, in the Ghost Show, a sage and an unenlightened man reads, quote, if a person striving to propagate the correct teachings of the Buddha should hear and see others propounding the teachings of the sutras in a mistaken manner, and fails to approach them himself, or lacking the power to do that, fail to appeal to the sovereign, in this way take measures to correct them, then he is betraying the Buddhist teachings. If you don't take measures to correct what they're doing, then you are betraying the Buddhist teachings. We, ladies and gentlemen, at the proud Black Buddhist World Association, is trying to get Buddhism straight. Buddhism should be inclusive of our black culture, history, and language. I am Anthony F. Elmore, President and Founder of the proud Black Buddhist World Association, bringing you the lecture on Nichiren Shonin was a black Buddhist.
Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your Ringeto is the way in which karma go. Now your